Girls should always study hard. When I was 3, my mom had a baby boy, a younger brother. From that day on, both he and dad favored him, paying little attention to me and leaving me in grandma's care later, when my parents got divorced. They fought tooth and nail for custody of my brother but completely ignored me. In their eyes, I was nothing more than an afterthought, a burden they didn't want to deal with. When I was 3, Mom's belly started growing bigger for no apparent reason. I thought it was strange, how could someone's stomach keep getting larger and larger? And strangely, both my parents seemed to care a lot about whatever was inside her belly. They stopped taking me to the supermarket to buy snacks as often as they used to. One time, in a fit of anger, I slapped Mom's belly. Dad immediately struck me across the face. It was the first time he'd ever hit me, and I was heartbroken. Was it really because I had slapped Mom's belly? But wasn't it their fault for breaking promises like the one about going to the amusement park? Later, Mom tried to cheer me up with my favorite Hershey's chocolate. I forgave them almost instantly. Smiling, she asked me, "Wouldn't it be nice if Mom gave you a little brother to play with?" I didn't fully understand what she meant, but I nodded anyway. "When your brother comes, you'll be a big sister," Mom said gently, patting my head. "You'll have to help Mom take care of him, okay?" Though I only vaguely understood, I nodded again, feeling a small spark of excitement. When the baby came, I decided I'd share all my favorite toys and treats with him. It was a bright, sunny afternoon when I skipped home from kindergarten, only to find the house eerily empty. By evening, Dad finally came back. "Samantha, I'm home," he called out. I rushed out of my room. "Where's Mom?" "Where did she go?" I asked curiously. "Mom's at the hospital. She gave birth to your little brother, and she'll be back in a few days," Dad replied with a smile. "Okay." I nodded enthusiastically, already counting the days in my head. I couldn't wait to meet this person who had been growing inside Mom's belly for so long. A few days later, Mom returned, carrying the baby boy I'd been waiting for. But the moment I saw him, I burst into tears, not because I was happy, but because he was, well, ugly. His face was all wrinkly, his eyes were just slits, and his nose and mouth looked squished together. He kept crying loudly, which made me think he was nothing but trouble. Dad noticed my distaste and chuckled softly. "Samantha, you're a big girl now. You need to help Mom take care of Ethan." I didn't quite understand. Just a few days ago, my teacher had called me a little kid. How had I suddenly become a big girl? And besides, having a brother wasn't nearly as wonderful as my parents had promised. Ethan was too small to talk or play with me. Instead, it felt like he took all the attention that used to belong to me. Every day, my parents revolved around him, leaving me feeling neglected. Because of Ethan, I learned how to cook, sweep the floor, and wipe the tables. My parents said I was a big girl now and needed to practice being independent. A good child one everyone would love was someone who could handle household chores, though I didn't fully grasp their reasoning. I knew one thing: I wanted to be a good girl. I wanted my parents' praise, so I threw myself into doing chores. As the days went by, I gradually adjusted to life with my brother. Most of the time, things were still as fulfilling and joyful for me as they had been before. My teachers and classmates at kindergarten treated me just like they always had. But at home, there was an undercurrent of resentment that lingered. For instance, my parents would get upset if I refused to let Ethan play with my favorite toys. Or they'd blame me whenever he cried for no reason. "You're the older sister," they'd say. "You should give in to your brother. When he grows up, he'll be able to play with you and protect you if anyone ever bullies you." I was a little confused by this. Why would someone want to bully me? And why did I need a brother to protect me when I already had my parents looking out for me? It didn't make much sense to me. Still, I kept these thoughts to myself, not wanting to argue with them. Before long, the summer vacation I had been eagerly anticipating finally arrived. "Mom and Dad are going to take you to Grandma's house for a visit," they announced. I was overjoyed. At Grandma's there was my cousin Emily, who was a year older than me, ready to play with me. There were vast fields where we could run free, and a pond where we could catch frogs. It sounded far more exciting than staying cooped up at home. After spending a few days at Grandma's, my parents asked me on their way out if I wanted to stay longer. Without hesitation, I said yes. Summer break was still long, and I wanted to enjoy every moment of it here. Mom smiled and said, "All right then, you can stay here with Grandma and your cousin. When we visit, we'll bring you some treats." Satisfied, I nodded and went back to playing games with Emily. But moments later, Mom disappeared into the next room with Grandma, and soon enough, raised voices filled the air. "Why should I have to pay my brother? I'll pay you for watching me, but why does he get anything? Don't forget, Samantha is your granddaughter too. You didn't charge him a cent for taking care of his kids, yet you're asking me to pay so much. What kind of logic is that? I'm obligated to help my son, it's only natural. But you're a married daughter now. You're no longer part of this family. If you want me to watch your kid, you need to compensate my son as well." Their argument grew louder and more heated, spilling into accusations and resentment. Emily and I sat frozen in the other room, nearly in tears from the tension. After dinner, my parents reminded me to be a good girl and listen to Grandma while they were gone. "We'll come see you in a few days," they said before leaving. I nodded, waving goodbye as their car drove away. As the days passed and the start of school approached, my parents still hadn't come for me. A growing sense of unease settled in my chest. Then one day, Grandma told me that I would be staying here to attend school, and it might be a long time before my parents could come get me. In that moment, I felt like I had been abandoned. I cried myself to sleep that night, sobbing until my eyes were swollen. Grandma quickly called my parents, and when I managed to speak through my tears, I asked them why they weren't coming to take me home. "Isn't it fun staying with Grandma and your cousin?" They replied gently, "We'll visit often and bring you treats. Just be a good girl and listen to Grandma, okay?" I wanted to say more, but the words caught in my throat. All I could do was stammer and choke on my sobs, struggling to breathe between cries. Grandma sighed deeply, pulling me into her arms and patting my back softly. "Good girl, listen to Grandma," she murmured soothingly. "No matter what happens, always focus on your studies. Education is your key to a better life. If you study hard, you'll have a brighter future." Her words didn't ease the pain right away, but they planted a seed in my heart, one that would grow over time. That summer flew by, and I started attending the local kindergarten before moving on to elementary school. Life here was carefree and joyful. Vast fields became my playground, and the endless mountains were my treasure chest. If it weren't for the occasional phone calls from my parents during holidays, I might have forgotten all about my old life in the city. One day during the summer break of 4th grade, my parents came to visit me. They arrived with bags full of treats, but as I looked at the man and woman standing before me, they felt strangely unfamiliar. I knew they were my parents, but their faces seemed distant, almost unrecognizable. And then there was a little boy clinging to the woman's hand, my brother, who had grown so much since I last saw him. My parents smiled brightly and called out my name, "Samantha, don't you recognize us? Why aren't you calling us?" I shuffled uncomfortably, gripping the hem of my shirt tightly. My voice trembled as I whispered, "Dad, Mom." They laughed softly, pulling me closer. Then they nudged the boy toward me. "Samantha, this is your brother Ethan. Do you remember him?" Ethan shyly hid behind the woman, giggling nervously. The man picked him up, holding him close. Meanwhile, the woman squatted down beside me, asking gentle questions. Had I missed them? Was I happy to see them? To be honest, I didn't feel much joy. Instead, a sour ache filled my chest, but I dared not voice these feelings, only nodding silently in response. After lunch, Mom announced that they had come to take me back home. She glanced disapprovingly at the jars of Lagana chili sauce and fried rice on the table. Her tone turned sharp. "Who let you eat all this junk food? It's completely unhealthy. No wonder you look so pale and thin. You can't stay here anymore. We're taking you back." I lowered my head, murmuring quietly, "But I eat well here. Grandma takes good care of me." Mom ignored me, storming into the next room to confront Grandma. "I pay you $1,500 every month for living expenses, and this is how you feed her. All this unhealthy stuff, spicy snacks included. You'll ruin her health." Grandma bristled, defending herself fiercely. "It's not like she eats it every day. You ate spicy snacks when you were young too. Don't act like I'm neglecting her. I've raised both kids equally well, and it was your decision to leave her with me in the first place. Now you're blaming me for doing what you asked." The argument escalated quickly, voices rising until Grandpa and Dad intervened to calm them down. Standing outside the door, I cried silently. In that moment, I felt like a burden wherever I went, and now I realized I would have to leave Grandma. Emily and my friends behind. This time, I truly didn't want to go. Even though I cried my eyes out, my parents insisted on taking me back. As we drove away from the familiar countryside and into the towering skyscrapers of the city, I felt an emptiness in my chest. I didn't understand why I couldn't stay with the people and places I knew so well. Why did I have to leave everything familiar behind and start over again? When we arrived home, my parents had converted the study into a small bedroom for me. They took me shopping at Walmart, buying all sorts of snacks and treats, as if trying to make up for everything I'd missed out on during the years I was away. As the new school term approached, my parents prepared a large suitcase for me. I watched silently as Mom packed blankets, clothes, shampoo, and other essentials, confused. I asked her what it was all for. Samantha, she explained gently, your dad and I enrolled you in a boarding school. It's a great place, excellent facilities, top-notch teachers. You'll focus on your studies there and catch up on the knowledge you've missed. And besides, tuition is expensive. It costs thousands of dollars a year, so you need to work hard, Dad added from the side. We got you a phone plan too. If you ever miss us, just give us a call. We'll try to visit whenever we can. I remained silent, standing still by the door. On our way out, Aunt Zhang, our neighbor, happened to be taking out the trash. Where's Samantha off to with all these bags? She asked curiously. We enrolled her in a boarding school, Dad replied. She'll only come home once per semester. Today's her first day. Oh, how wonderful! Aunt Zhang exclaimed, glancing at me with admiration. You're really raising Samantha well. My own kid is already in middle school but acts like a wild monkey, running around everywhere. He still needs his grandma to carry his backpack, and he's completely spoiled, Dad chuckled. Kids are all like that. But ours is really mature for her age. We trust her to live independently. Aunt Zhang looked at me with envy, her praise evident in her tone, but despite the compliments, I didn't feel happy. I didn't want to be mature or responsible. I wanted to be carefree like Ethan, staying close to my parents without worrying about anything. But I didn't dare say that. I thought if I weren't such a good girl, my parents might stop loving me, and I was scared, so incredibly scared. On the first day of school, the teacher asked all new students to introduce themselves to the class. There were 3 of us, myself and 2 other girls who looked just as nervous and awkward as I felt. We stood at the front of the room, none of us willing to speak first. The other students watched us with curiosity, whispering and giggling among themselves. The atmosphere was buzzing with excitement, but for me, it felt like an eternity of discomfort. Seeing our hesitation, the teacher finally stepped in, briefly explaining each of our backgrounds before gently urging us to greet the class and return to our seats. By the time I walked back down from the podium, my legs felt like jelly. The first class was English. During the lesson, the teacher called on me to answer a question. It wasn't difficult. I stood up and confidently said, "C." The entire class erupted into laughter. Confused, the teacher tried to restore order. Did you say C? Is that correct? Yes, C, I replied softly. More laughter followed. My face burned bright red as I sat down, unsure whether I had given the wrong answer. To my surprise, the teacher praised me, saying I'd chosen the right option. Still, I couldn't shake off the embarrassment. A girl sitting next to me leaned over and whispered, "Say it after me, C." I repeated obediently, though I didn't understand why. She grinned mischievously and repeated it a few more times before bursting into laughter. During the break between classes, one of the boys behind me tapped me on the shoulder. As soon as I turned around, he loudly mocked, "Redneck, where did you go to school if you don't even know how to pronounce C?" Others joined in, laughing uproariously. I've never heard someone call C before. You really are a country bumpkin. C, ha ha ha. They jeered. I felt like I was standing in the middle of a furnace, their mocking voices scorching me alive. Stiffly, I turned back around, feeling utterly humiliated. Thankfully, the bell rang just then, saving me from further torment. For the rest of the day, every glance or snicker from my classmates made my heart sink deeper. I wished I could disappear entirely. The results of the midterm exams were announced, and I scored 100% in all 3 subjects: math, English, and science. While I didn't find the tests particularly challenging, they covered material we'd already gone over in class. As long as you paid attention and avoided careless mistakes, I couldn't help but feel a spark of pride when the teacher announced in front of the entire class that I was the only student who had achieved perfect scores in all 3 subjects. The teacher even encouraged everyone else to learn from me. For the first time, I realized that excelling academically could actually be useful, at least for someone like me, who was so insecure, sensitive, and timid back then. It gave my fragile ego and self-respect a much-needed boost. It also provided me with some confidence around my classmates, something I desperately needed. However, this newfound confidence did little to stop the bullying from certain cliques in our class, or rather, the bullying directed at the 3 of us new students, to be honest. The reason was simple. They didn't like the fact that the 3 of us country bumpkins stuck together every day. During one PE class, the teacher handed out basketballs to everyone and let us practice dribbling on our own. My 2 friends and I decided to hang out under a pavilion nearby to play with our ball. Suddenly, a basketball came flying from afar and hit one of my friends square in the chest. When I looked up, I saw 3 girls standing not too far away, laughing loudly. Years passed, and life continued to shape me in ways I never imagined. The struggles of my childhood, the neglect, the bullying, the constant feeling of being an outsider became the foundation for a resilience I didn't know I had. By high school, I had grown into someone stronger, more confident, and determined. My love for learning only deepened, becoming not just a means to earn approval but a passion that fueled my dreams. I excelled academically, earning scholarships and awards, yet I remained grounded, always remembering the little girl who once felt invisible. One day during senior year, I was called to the principal's office. Sitting there were my parents, looking both proud and nervous. They handed me a letter, an acceptance letter from Stanford University. Tears welled up in my eyes as I realized how far it'd come. That piece of paper wasn't just about academics. It symbolized everything I had overcome: the loneliness, the pain, the fear of not being good enough. I graduated at the top of my class. And on graduation day, something remarkable happened. Ethan, now a teenager, stood beside me, beaming with pride. For the first time, I saw him not as the brother who stole my parents' attention, but as someone who admired me. Our relationship began to heal, built on mutual respect rather than competition. Years later, after completing my degree in education, I returned to my hometown not to relive the past, but to make a difference. I became a teacher at a local school. Inspired by the challenges I faced growing up, every day, I worked to create a nurturing environment for students like me, those who felt overlooked or undervalued. One afternoon, while teaching a class of 4th graders, I noticed a quiet girl sitting alone in the corner, her head bowed low. She reminded me so much of myself all those years ago. After class, I approached her and asked if she'd like to join me for lunch. Over sandwiches and juice boxes, we talked about her fears, her hopes, and her dreams. As I listened to her, I thought about how far I'd come since that little girl crying in grandma's arms. Life hadn't been easy, but every hardship had taught me something valuable, and now it was my turn to pass on those lessons to show others, especially young girls, that no matter where they come from or what they've been through, they have the power to rise above it all. In the end, I understood that reading, learning, and pursuing knowledge weren't just tools for survival, they were pathways to empowerment, connection, and transformation. Through them, I found not only success but also belonging, purpose, and peace. The story has come to an end. Thank you for watching. For more stories, please subscribe to my channel for daily updates of captivating tales.